Good afternoon. My name is Barringer, and I'm a business student at Penn State Behrend who's recently learned about something very interesting. It's called cap-and-trade economic policy. For those of you who don't know, cap-and-trade systems are environmental regulations that are low cost and high impact. They've been proven effective around the world. Given the dire circumstances that humanity currently faces in regard to the ever-shrinking window of opportunity modern science is up against, cap-and-trade systems could potentially be extremely effective in reducing and eventually eliminating greenhouse gas emissions in the United States and hopefully worldwide. Thus, I propose that a cap-and-trade system should be implemented immediately by the federal government to control carbon emissions, as it is economically prudent, has been proven to be effective around the world with carbon and similar emissions, and it is a temporary measure that can eventually lead to a complete reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. To begin with, cap-and-trade systems use substantiated economic theories to regulate emissions without the need for strict laws that companies are incentivized to ignore. And it basically works like this. The strictly enforced cap creates economic demand for permits, the supply, which allow companies to pollute. The company will only purchase these permits after they've already exhausted all of the more cost-effective options to reduce their emissions. If they're not able to purchase enough permits, they can buy permits from more environmentally friendly companies that have less emissions. Additionally, these kind of systems are very cheap and cost-effective to introduce. The cap-and-trade system for sulfur dioxide, for example, only costs about $3 billion a year, but it generates $122 billion worth of economic benefits annually. And this is according to the Smithsonian Magazine. Simply put, cap-and-trade systems are feasible, cost-effective to implement and keep up, and allow markets, not the government, to regulate emissions. In addition to this, cap-and-trade systems have been successfully introduced since the Bush-era administration. That's the first Bush in the 90s. And they've proven to be incredibly effective at reducing emissions. In 1995, when the first cap-and-trade system was implemented to reduce emissions associated with acid rain, pollutants were reduced by 3 million tons in that first year alone. In 2018, the EU reports that greenhouse gas emissions were down 29% from 2005 when they first implemented a cap-and-trade system. And in California, the Environmental Defense Fund reports that from 2013 to 2018, greenhouse gas emissions were reduced by 10%. Cap-and-trade systems work, and their successful implementation could mean the difference between successfully mitigating climate change and suffering the consequences that come with irreparable climate change. Finally, cap-and-trade systems are temporary measures that help to mitigate the short and long-term consequences associated with climate change. And when the system is eventually dissolved, the goal is that the targeted emissions are reduced completely. After the successful execution, the initial execution of a cap-and-trade system, the cap and the number of permits issued each year decreases until the system reaches maturity and the cap is so low that the emissions are negligible. Given the division of ideologies in our government and the need for immediate action, cap-and-trade offers a very attractive solution. It's appealing to both sides of the aisle, which is why it was implemented in its earliest stages, and the successful execution of such systems could also help to open the floor to more discussion for more radical climate change systems. However, not everyone is satisfied by cap-and-trade. In response to this, environmentalists claim that the strategy is simply not extreme enough. They state that because of the very dire timeline that humanity is on, the more extreme measures, like completely banning fossil fuels, are necessary. They cite articles like the BBC's article in 2019 that states that humanity only has about 18 months to either clean up its act or face the irreparable consequences of climate change. And they say that this justifies the most extreme measures possible. And they simply find that cap-and-trade is not extreme enough. However, cap-and-trade systems provide immediate relief and open the floor for more extreme regulation to be passed in the future. Furthermore, given the current political climate of America, extreme regulation simply isn't feasible. It's not going to pass. In contrast, less extreme regulation, like cap-and-trade, is appealing to both sides because it's economically prudent and it generates money for the government, in addition to eliminating the need for extreme and costly measures that could hurt the economy. Speaking of economy, on the other hand, industry executives who are positioned in companies that could be very powerfully affected by cap-and-trade regulation claim that the system is too extreme. They state that this type of regulation could hurt the economy because it will cause them to have to hike prices for their consumers. They reference past failures of extreme taxes and regulation that was either shot down in Congress or proved ineffective when it was released. They also claim that increased costs due to regulation may lead to businesses moving from the US to other countries, which is a phenomenon called carbon leakage. However, cap-and-trade systems have proven effective in the past with little economic fallout, and current research suggests that there's actually a net benefit associated with the creation of new jobs and industries that comply with cap-and-trade regulations. UC Berkeley reports that there was more economic activity in Californian counties that implemented cap-and-trade systems, and more jobs were created. In regard to carbon leakage, the European Union has already implemented an international cap-and-trade policy for carbon, proving that measures can be taken to include other countries and reduce economic migration. To sum up, cap-and-trade systems should be implemented in the United States to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and this should be done by the federal government. These systems are economically pragmatic, have proven to be effective, and cap-and-trade provides significant benefits in both the short and the long term, and can open the door for more severe regulation. Given the dire circumstances humanity currently finds itself in, cap-and-trade regulation is absolutely necessary. These systems are cheap to implement and maintain from a policy perspective, and the benefits of such far outweigh any of the costs associated with these systems. Cap-and-trade is effective, and it's the perfect compromise between industry and the environment, except that it doesn't compromise results. Thank you.